In the Black Canyon of the Colorado River, where the Mojave Desert presses hard against the border of Nevada and Arizona, there stands a wall of concrete so massive, so precise, so breathtaking in its audacity, that engineers who see it for the first time often fall silent. It rises 726 feet from bedrock to crest. It holds back a lake 10 miles long. It weighs more than 6.5 million tons, and it was built by hand, by sweat, by sheer human will, in the middle of the worst economic catastrophe in American history. This is the story of Hoover Dam. By the late 1920s, the American Southwest was a land of ambition and anxiety. Cities were growing, farms were spreading across the desert, and the Colorado River, bold, unpredictable, prone to catastrophic flooding, ran through the heart of it all. The river had already proven its destructive power. In the early 1900s, a break in an irrigation canal sent the Colorado pouring unchecked into the Salton Sea for nearly 2 years. The damage was staggering. The Southern Pacific Railroad spent $3 million trying to repair it and never recovered a cent from the federal government. The river was a force that demanded a reckoning. For decades, engineers and politicians had dreamed of taming it. They imagined a dam that could control floods, store water for irrigation, and generate electricity for a region hungry for power. The Bureau of Reclamation had been studying canyon sites along the lower Colorado since the turn of the century. Engineers first eyed Boulder Canyon, 20 miles north of the eventual site, but geological surveys revealed fault lines and construction obstacles that made it unworkable. Black Canyon, just to the south, proved far more promising. A railway could be run directly from Las Vegas. The canyon walls were solid. The bedrock was sound, or so it appeared. The politics were nearly as formidable as the engineering. 7 states shared the river's basin, each with competing claims over its water. The threat of endless litigation loomed over every proposal. In 1922, then Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover convened representatives of all 7 states and helped negotiate a solution, the Colorado River Compact, one of the most ambitious interstate agreements in American history, concluded among more states than any such compact had ever involved before. 6 years later, a catastrophic failure of the St. Francis Dam in Southern California, which killed up to 600 people, reminded a rattled Congress of what was at stake. The Black Canyon Dam was not merely an opportunity, it was a necessity. In December 1928, President Coolidge signed the Boulder Canyon Project Act. The age of the Great Dam had begun. What greeted the engineers when they arrived in Black Canyon was formidable. The canyon walls were sheer and unstable. The Colorado River, the very thing they needed to move, ran swift and relentless. The summer heat was merciless. In 1931, daytime temperatures averaged nearly 120 degrees Fahrenheit. 16 workers died of heat prostration in a single month. The nearest city was Las Vegas, then a modest town of 5,000 people. Between 10,000 and 20,000 unemployed men descended on it when construction was announced, many arriving with families in tow, settling into tent camps along the riverbank. One such camp, known as Ragtown, was home to desperate families who had traveled from across a broken nation, sleeping in canvas shelters in the desert heat, waiting for a chance to work. Before a single cubic yard of concrete could be poured, the river itself had to be rerouted. Workers drove 4 massive diversion tunnels through the canyon walls, 2 on the Nevada side, 2 on the Arizona side, each 56 feet in diameter, their combined length exceeding 3 miles. It was one of the largest tunneling operations ever attempted. The contract specified a penalty of $3,000 per day for any delay past October 1933. The pressure was relentless. The river was finally diverted into the Arizona tunnels on November 13, 1932. For the first time in geological memory, the bed of the Colorado River stood exposed to human hands. Then came the concrete, 3.25 million cubic yards of it, more than enough to pave a 2-lane highway from San Francisco to New York. The dam's design, an arch-gravity type, engineered to transmit the immense pressure of the impounded lake into the canyon walls themselves, called for a structure 660 feet thick at its base, narrowing to just 45 feet at the crest. Every dimension had been calculated by Chief Design Engineer John L. Savage with exacting precision. The engineers faced a problem no one had ever solved at this scale. Concrete generates tremendous heat as it cures. Bureau of Reclamation calculations showed that if the dam were poured as a single continuous mass, it would take 125 years to cool, and the resulting stresses would crack it beyond repair. The solution was ingenious. The dam was divided into hundreds of individual interlocking columns. Into each column, workers laid a web of 1-inch steel pipes, more than 582 miles of cooling pipe in all, through which river water was pumped first, followed by refrigerated water from an industrial plant built on site. When each block stopped contracting, the pipes were filled with grout. Block by block, column by column, the dam rose from the canyon floor. The first concrete was poured on June 6, 1933, 18 months ahead of schedule. The workforce was extraordinary in its scale and its suffering. More than 5,000 men labored on the dam at its peak. Among them were the high scalers, men who dangled hundreds of feet above the canyon floor on ropes, clearing loose rock with jackhammers and dynamite to prepare the walls for the enormous load they would bear. They were among the most watched and most celebrated workers on the site. Tourists came specifically to see them. One earned the nickname the human pendulum for swinging co-workers, and at times cases of dynamite across the canyon face. Some high scalers improvised their own protection, dipping cloth hats in tar and letting them harden into crude helmets. When men wearing them were struck hard enough to break their jaws, their skulls survived intact. 6 companies eventually ordered thousands of these hard hats and required their use, an early chapter in the long history of workplace safety. Superintendent Frank Crowe, the nation's foremost dam builder, drove the project with fierce intensity. When workers staged a strike in August 1931, furious over wage cuts and brutal working conditions, Crowe responded by shutting down the site entirely and laying off the entire workforce. They were given until 5 o'clock that evening to leave. Within days, the company began rehiring, and the strike collapsed. The workers won nothing, except a promise that wages would not be cut further. 112 deaths were officially recorded during construction. The first fatality occurred in 1921, when a Bureau of Reclamation surveyor fell from a barge while mapping the canyon. The last fell from an intake tower on December 20th, 1935. His name was Patrick Tierney. His father, surveyor J.G. Tierney, had drowned in the Colorado River on the same date 13 years before while searching for the dam's ideal location. An additional 42 workers died of what was officially recorded as pneumonia. Their fellow workers believed otherwise, that the true cause was carbon monoxide poisoning from gasoline-powered vehicles running in the poorly ventilated diversion tunnels, where temperatures reached 140 degrees Fahrenheit and exhaust hung in thick plumes. No non-workers in Boulder City died of pneumonia during the same period. The dam's design was as visionary as its engineering. Architect Gordon B. Kaufman swept away an early Gothic-inspired facade and replaced it with sweeping Art Deco elegance. Artist Alan Tupper True wove Native American motifs, drawn from Navajo and Pueblo traditions, from sand paintings, textiles, and ceramics, into the walkways and interior halls, creating something that felt simultaneously ancient and modern. Sculptor Oscar Hansen created the 30-foot bronze winged figures of the Republic. So large and so highly polished, they were placed on beds of ice and guided into position as the ice melted beneath them. Beneath the figures, embedded in a terrazzo floor, lies a star map of the Northern Hemisphere sky, precisely as it appeared on September 30th, 1935, the day President Franklin Roosevelt dedicated the dam before 10,000 people in 100-degree heat. Roosevelt never once mentioned Herbert Hoover's name. Hoover was not invited. By 1939, the dam's power plant had become the largest hydroelectric facility in the world. Today, it serves 18 million people across 3 states and irrigates more than 1 million acres of farmland. 7 million visitors make the journey each year. Concrete cores tested in 1995 confirm that the dam continues, slowly, to grow stronger. And yet the dam faces pressures its builders could not have imagined. 2 decades of drought and surging demand have dropped Lake Mead to record lows. New turbines have been installed to keep the generators running at diminished water levels. The engineers of this generation are still solving problems that have never been solved before, much like the men who first stood at the rim of Black Canyon and chose, against all reason, to believe they could fill it. Sculptor Oscar Hansen once said that the building of Hoover Dam belongs to the sagas of the daring. In an era when the world was coming apart, a nation poured its grief and its genius and its labor into the walls of a canyon and made something that endures. If you found this history worth knowing, subscribe for more stories of human ambition in steel, stone, and concrete.